Everyone says speed costs money, but what if they're just bad at buying cars? In this video, we're showing you 5 sports cars that give you real performance without emptying your wallet. And yes, one of them is so good, it never had a single recall. Watch till the end or you'll miss the wildest one. Number 5. Mazda MX5 Miata NC. In 2005, Mazda engineers were given a problem that sounded impossible. They had to make the 3rd generation Miata bigger and safer, but it also had to stay light and fun to drive. Most companies would have made a car that felt heavy and dull, but Mazda didn't just solve the problem. They created one of the most balanced sports cars ever built. The lightest version of this Miata, known as the NC, weighs just 2,480 pounds. That's lighter than most small sedans on the road today. But Mazda didn't just try to cut weight randomly. They looked at every single part of the car. The engine was moved back by 135 millimeters. The battery, which was originally in the trunk, was placed right behind the engine. The fuel tank was moved forward by 110 millimeters and lowered by 120. All of this was done to hit a perfect 50-50 weight balance between the front and rear of the car. The engine was a 2.0-liter 4-cylinder called the MZR LFVE. It made 167 horsepower and reached peak power at 6,700 RPM, which was also its red line. That meant the car could stay at its most powerful point all the way to the top of the rev range without stress. It also had a flat torque curve from 4,000 to 6,000 RPM, so the power delivery always felt smooth and steady. Mazda also changed the suspension setup. They removed the old double wishbones and replaced them with a front wishbone and rear multi-link system taken from the RX-8. This helped reduce dive during braking by 38% and squat during acceleration by 78%. As a result, the car stayed level and balanced during quick changes in speed. A small detail that many people don't know is that this was the first Miata to offer a power retractable hardtop. The top could open or close in 12 seconds and didn't affect trunk space at all. Even more impressive, it made the car stiffer than the soft top version and only added 88 pounds. Another clever upgrade was the automatic climate control. You could drive with the top down in 40-degree weather and still stay warm. The system pushed heated air low into the cabin and adjusted the fan speed based on how fast you were driving. It felt like having your own little bubble of warmth, even when the outside air was freezing. Performance numbers were solid too. A well-maintained NC could reach 60 miles per hour in 6.5 seconds and pull 0.90 G on the skid pad. It might not sound fast on paper, but this car had such a lightweight body and sharp steering that it felt faster than cars with much more power. It gave drivers a feeling of complete control and endless grip. Even better, the NC Miata was incredibly reliable. It's the only Miata generation that never had a single federal recall. The engine used a timing chain, so there was no need for expensive belt replacements. Common issues were minor, like blocked drains or seatbelt retractor problems. With regular maintenance, these engines could easily last 200,000 miles. Number 4. Nissan 370Z. In 2009, Nissan took a very different path. While other companies were making engines smaller and adding turbochargers, Nissan went the other way. They built a bigger, more complex engine just because they could. The result was the 3.7-liter V6 called the VQ37 VHR. It powered the 370Z, and it was one of the most advanced naturally aspirated engines ever made. What made it special was the system called VVEL. Instead of controlling airflow with a normal throttle, this system managed air directly at the intake valves. It used an electric motor connected to a mechanical system that changed the lift and timing of the valves in real time. On the intake side, instead of using fixed cam lobes, it had rotating shafts with offset shapes. These spun and moved a set of rocker arms, which then opened and closed the valve. A stepper motor controlled the movement thousands of times per minute, always adjusting the airflow perfectly. This setup gave the engine 332 horsepower at 7,000 RPM and 270 pound-feet of torque at 5,200 RPM. What stood out was how flat the torque curve was. From 2,000 RPM all the way to the 7,500 RPM red line, the engine pulled smoothly and never felt weak. Most naturally aspirated engines have power spikes and dead spots, but the 370Z felt strong across the whole rev range. The engine was also built to last. It used an aluminum block with a forged steel crankshaft and had a compression ratio of 11:1. The cylinder heads had 4 valves per cylinder. The intake valves were 36.6 millimeters wide, and the exhaust valves were 30.2 millimeters, which is large for an engine this size. That's why it breathed so well at high RPM. But the 370Z wasn't just about the engine. It was also the first production car to offer Synchro Rev Match. This system could detect when you were about to downshift and would automatically blip the throttle to match engine speed. It gave you perfect gear changes every time, even if you weren't an expert driver. The rest of the car was well built too. It used a shortened version of the Infiniti G37 platform, which gave it a solid, independent suspension with many aluminum parts. The car weighed 3,232 pounds. That meant every horsepower only had to move about 9.74 pounds, which is impressive. On the road, the 370Z could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.8 seconds and finish the quarter mile in 13.2 seconds at 108 miles per hour. It could also pull 0.95 G on the skid pad and stop from 60 miles per hour in just 108 feet if you had the Brembo Sport package. The engine also held up well under stress. Many tuners added superchargers or turbo kits and pushed the VQ37 VHR past 600 horsepower. The engine block could handle it. It came with forged connecting rods and a crankshaft designed to stay balanced under extreme pressure. Number 3. Ford Mustang GT Coyote. In 2011, Ford made a bold move. They retired their trusted 4.6-liter V8 and replaced it with something brand new, a 5.0-liter engine packed with features that no American V8 had ever used before. They called it the Coyote, and it completely changed how people looked at muscle cars. The Coyote wasn't just another V8. It had something rare: twin independent variable cam timing. That meant the intake and exhaust cams could adjust themselves separately, while most other V8s were still using old pushrod setups with fixed timing. Ford went with dual overhead cams, which let the engine breathe and rev in ways muscle cars weren't known for. The block was aluminum, with deep skirts and strong bearing caps. The crankshaft was forged steel. The bore and stroke were 92.2 by 92.7 millimeters, giving it exactly 5.0 liters. The compression ratio was 11:1, which sounds high, but it still ran fine on regular gas because of the advanced timing control. Inside the heads, it used 4 valves per cylinder. It didn't have old-school rocker arm. Instead, it used roller finger followers to reduce friction. The intake valves were 37.3 millimeters, and the exhaust valves were 30. That gave it a lot of breathing room and helped it rev easily to 7,000 RPM. The early Coyotes from 2011 to 2014 made 412 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque, but Ford kept refining it. By 2018, it was up to 460 horsepower and 420 pound-feet. In the 2024 Mustang GT, it makes 480 horsepower, numbers once reserved for supercars. What really made the Coyote special was how it delivered power. Most muscle car engines gave you a big punch down low and faded at high revs. The Coyote kept pulling, all the way to 7,500 RPM. Ford also used some racing tech. The cylinder walls didn't use traditional iron liners. They sprayed a plasma coating on instead. This saved weight and improved heat transfer. The pistons were aluminum with coatings to reduce friction. The rods were forged steel, ready to take serious abuse. Number 2. Chevrolet Camaro. It came with 2 engine choices that showed 2 different ideas. The V6 model had the LFX engine. The SS version came with the LS3 V8. Both were excellent, just in very different ways. The LFX was a 3.6-liter V6 that used direct injection and dual overhead cams. It made 323 horsepower and 278 pound-feet of torque. That was more power than the Mustang GT's V8 had just a few years earlier. The injection system ran at 2150 psi and helped the engine deliver both performance and efficiency. It had an exhaust manifold built into the heads, which saved space and weight. It used forged steel rods and aluminum pistons with coatings. With an 11.5:1 compression ratio, it still ran on regular gas thanks to its precise injection. It could go from 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds. The quarter mile came in 14.5 seconds, and it got 30 miles per gallon on the highway. Not bad for a car that looked and sounded like a muscle car. But the real star was the SS model with the LS3 V8. This was a 6.2-liter engine that made 426 horsepower with the manual and 400 with the automatic. The difference came from slightly different cam timing in the auto version. The LS3 had an aluminum block and push rods instead of overhead cams. But don't let that make you think it was outdated. It had strong 6-bolt main caps, rectangular port heads, and massive valves, 2.165 inches for intake and 1.590 for exhaust. It made 420 pound-feet of torque at 4,600 RPM and could spin all the way to 6,600 RPM. The bore and stroke were 103.25 by 92 millimeters, which made it rev happy despite the pushrod design. The engine was built to take a beating. The crankshaft was forged and balanced. The rods were powdered metal. The pistons had anti-scuff coating. With a 10.7:1 compression ratio, it still ran on pump gas and made serious power. In the SS Camaro, the LS3 could do 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds with the automatic and 4.8 with the manual, but the quarter mile was actually faster in the manual, 13.0 seconds at 111 miles per hour, compared to 13.1 seconds at 109 for the automatic. The Camaro was built on the same platform as the Cadillac CTS. That meant it had independent suspension all around, aluminum control arms, and available magnetic ride shocks that could adjust 1,000 times a second. Even though it was heavy, almost 3,850 pounds, it handled like a smaller car. The optional 1LE package made it even sharper, with better suspension, cooling, and wheels. The result was a muscle car that could handle itself on a track without breaking a sweat. Number 1. Subaru BRZ Scion FRS. In 2012, Subaru and Toyota teamed up to do something different. They didn't chase horsepower, they focused on feel. The Subaru BRZ Scion FRS weren't fast in a straight line. They were built to make drivers smile. At the center was the FA20 engine. It was a 2.0-liter flat 4, which meant the pistons moved side to side instead of up and down. This gave the car a low center of gravity and great balance. The engine used both direct and port injection. The system was called D4S, and it let the engine run clean and efficient. The bore and stroke were both 86 millimeters. That balance gave it smooth revving and solid torque. The compression ratio was a sky-high 12.5 to 1. Most engines that high need race fuel, but the FA20 made it work with regular gas. It had dual overhead cams, variable valve timing, and lightweight components. The intake valves were 34.5 millimeters. The exhaust valves were 28. The rods were forged steel. The pistons were coated aluminum. The red line was 7,400 RPM. It made 200 horsepower at 7,000 RPM and 151 pound-feet at 6,400. Not huge numbers, but the car only weighed 2,762 pounds. The weight balance was 53.5% front and 46.5% rear. The center of gravity was just 18.1 inches from the ground, lower than most supercars. It used McPherson struts in front and a double wishbone setup in the rear. The front subframe was aluminum. The steering was hydraulic with a quick 13.1 to 1 ratio. That gave the driver tons of feedback and control. It did 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds. The quarter mile came in 14.6 seconds. But the numbers didn't tell the full story. On a twisty road, the BRZ or FRS could keep up with cars twice as powerful, or just that well balanced. And the FA20 engine didn't just perform, it lasted. It had some small problems like coil packs and oil use, but major failures were rare. It proved that a lightweight, high-compression engine could be both exciting and dependable. Let us know in the comments which one's your favorite.